Oh yeah, I was very aware that what I was doing. Heck yes, I had to be. I had to make sure that it was right. My name is Dino Brugioni, and I'm from Stafford County, and I have a story to tell. In those days, you bought a box camera or a bellows camera, and you couldn't set the speed or anything else. So there was a new camera out called the American Leica. Cost $8, and I bought a light meter for $2. And I took some very good pictures. But when the war came, I enlisted and was trained in photo reconnaissance and experimental bombing and other things like that. See, I was one of the few people that could read the diagrams, because most kids that were being brought into the service were just high school graduates. I had 2 years of college, so I could look at a print and tell all about it. I flew 66 bombing missions, and I don't know, 15 to 20 reconnaissance missions, but you didn't get credit for reconnaissance. You had to drop a bomb to get credit to go home. The war ended in August. In September, I got out, I got my bachelor's and master's, and I was studying a PhD. They asked if I wanted to join this. It was the predecessor of the CIA. So I joined, and I became an expert on Soviet industry. Found out, I knew all about where the various plants were. And in 1954, I was called in and said I had a new job. And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, you'll learn about it fast enough." And of course, there was the development of the U-2. And I was one of 10 people selected to set up a photo interpretation organization using the materials from the U-2s, the National Photographic Interpretation Center. And we would be responsible only to the president. So July 4th, 1956, we start flying over Russia. President Kennedy is elected, but before he's elected, Eisenhower takes him under his wing and teaches him all about the good of photo interpretation. And he understands our terminology, and he understands us very, very well. We're watching a number of countries, but we're watching Cuba real close. All of a sudden, the Russians began sending a lot of equipment. We could even measure crates and determine what was in them. And whatever they were sending to Cuba, we were cataloging. And then we raised the specter that we were seeing things that might indicate they were going to do something drastic. And October the 14th, we flew a mission over the area, and we find missiles in the field, and we found 2 sites. When we found the sites, I called my boss, Art Lundahl. He was the director. He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "No doubt about it. We're right. We measured them. We're seeing objects 65 feet long." So the next morning, he briefs the president. And the president turns to him and said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Mr. President, I'm as sure of this as we've been as sure of anything." He said, "Very well." Now, President Kennedy is on campaign. Bobby comes over, and Bobby was the president's eyes and ears. Bobby Kennedy was always fidgety. He's always on the go. And he comes over and he said, "It looks like there's somebody digging trenches for a basement." We said, "No, sir, look at the roads. The roads have all circular curves, indicating that you're carrying an object that's long, and you can't go to a corner and turn it. You're carrying an object that's 65 feet long." So we convinced him that that's an intermediate range ballistic missile. It goes to Adlai Stevenson at the United Nations. And Adlai Stevenson confronts Zorin. "Do you deny that there's missiles in Cuba?" And Zorin pauses, said he's not on trial in the United States. And Stevenson said, "Very well, I'm ready to wait till hell freezes over for an answer." And with that, the briefing boards, I made the 3 briefing boards that are shown at the United Nations. And that brings public opinion to us Not only that, but the world supports us. And those photographs that I prepared are the ones that was used at the United Nations. October the 27th is a day that I'll never forget. Because that morning I get word that one of our U-2 planes is late. And then I get a call from NSA. They say there's all kinds of Russian chatter. He's probably been shot down. Right after that morning, I tell Mr. Lundahl, all 24 missile sites are operational, meaning that there's launchers on the pad and that we could have 24 missiles coming at us within a scope of 4 to 6 hours. I remember he stroked his chin, looked at me, and he said, I don't want to scare the hell out of them, but I want to make sure they understand the severity of it. So I prepared the briefing that night for the president. When my boss got back, I said, how did it go? And he said, not good at all. And I said, what's the matter? He said, the president's very concerned. I'll never forget, very concerned. There was 1,500 bombers loaded with nuclear weapons in the United States. There was 140 ICBMs, 8 Polaris submarines took to sea, each with missiles. So it looked like we were going to war, but with a nuclear war with the Soviets. I sleep that night with a cot next to my desk. I'm getting calls all night long. That morning I get a call from foreign broadcast, and they said, there's just one sentence. The Russians said they would remove the missiles. And I said, is that through diplomatic traffic? I said, no, that's through Radio Moscow. So we look at the photography, and we don't see any indication. And the president said, well, the president said he'd give them another day. And sure enough, the next day they're pulling the launchers off of the pads, and the crisis kind of calms down. But it was a moment there that we were that close to a nuclear war. This is the guy that put the missiles in Cuba. My grandpa came over here without the proverbial pot to pee in. All his children, he wanted to make sure they were educated. Only in America could that happen, that I was given that job. And I look back that I could have made much more money if I'd have gone into international law and banking than I did with the government. But I looked at that was my payback to the government for what they gave my family here in the United States.